gaming addiction has been officially recognized as an illness. Not everyone agrees on that. Facebook communities lose their mind over a raccoon, and the sweet feminist account isn't feeling so sweet towards Miley Cyrus. My name is Elisa Steele. This is Deconstructing the Culture. Alrighty then, I am officially back in the country. I was in Costa Rica for a while, if you've been following me on Instagram, and then I was in my home state of Utah, which was glorious, and I love the mountains, but I'm back now. Now, while I was on vacation in Costa Rica, the hot button issue for me of animals versus humans came up, and humor me for a moment while I tell you this story. It's going to offend some of you, just so you know. I personally don't think that animals should be treated like humans. And for some reason, a lot of the Western world very strongly disagrees with me. Now, this came to a head a little bit with some of the other members of our party in Costa Rica, as me and my husband were in Costa Rica. We were at this little restaurant, and one of the members of our party wanted to buy food from the restaurant and feed it to the stray dogs hanging around, specifically one of them. And because she said it looked hungry. Now, I thought this was ridiculous and leave the dog alone. It's a stray dog. There's a bunch of them, especially in countries like Costa Rica or Mexico. They're kind of a nuisance and they're not necessarily domesticated half the time. They're just look through trash and whatever. Anyways, the nice shop owner, trying to be nice and trying to be polite to us tourists, of course, was just like, listen, I can't tell you, no, I'm not going to sell you food to feed the dog, but I would really like it if you didn't, because then that dog will continue to hang around and be a nuisance to my customers. Of course, the member of our party did not go with this shop owner's advice / wish. They purchased food and fed it to the dog, which irritated the heck out of me. But I was also very hot and there was no AC. So maybe that's why I was being grumpy that day. But a couple of days later, we run into a very similar situation. And I got so riled up to the point where I was just rather loudly, I said, nobody cares about the dogs, which according to my husband, I should not have said because it was rude and some people care about the dogs. And I promptly replied, I don't care about the dogs. I can say that. And if it offends them, that's fine, because it offends me that they are so obsessed with dogs that they treat them like humans. And quite frankly, I will start caring a little bit more about animals when we have first addressed the human rights crisis of abortion. Anyway, speaking of animals and treating them a little too highly, our glorious Facebook society and community lost their mind over a raccoon. I'll play you a little bit of what that clip sounds like, but essentially what happens and what you'll see is a lady is filming a gentleman, a middle-aged looking gentleman with a truck and a boat behind him. He gets out, I guess, and has a shovel and is hitting the raccoon and then toss it into the tall grass. And this lady loses her mind, posts it on the internet. These videos get something like 40,000 views, and the comments are a little crazy. I'll read you a couple of those in just a second. But essentially, when she just yells at him, everybody knows that raccoon, they feed it on purpose, and that's why it's here. And you can hear the guy and see him with his body language gesture to the woman in his truck, saying that he tried to or almost bit her. And I think he behaved rather reasonably. If I saw a random raccoon and wasn't familiar with it, and it was out in broad daylight and almost bit a human with me, I would be like, hey, this could be rabid, or it could not be. But either way, I'm not going to take a chance that it is rabid, because it could A, harm a member of my own party, or B, harm someone else. So I'm going to do a public service, get rid of this questionable raccoon to prevent anyone from having to get rabies shots. Because the way I understand it is, if you get bit by a wild animal or by an animal, period, and you cannot capture it to get their blood tested, that you have to get rabies shots, which I also hear are extremely, extremely painful, and it's a series of shots. So I think this guy behaved rather reasonably. I probably would have done the same thing, quite honestly, but the internet doesn't feel the same way, or at least this section of people. So here's a little bit of that video.
I can't believe that. kind of jerk would do something like that? He's trying to get food. He's always here. He comes right up to people all the time. People feed him. That's why he comes up to you. Whatever. I'll be turning it over to the police.
So as you can hear from the video, he says something like, I've actually listened to this a few times to try and catch up. For the life of me, I cannot hear what he tried to say. Something about a rabid raccoon. So he's clearly concerned. And this lady is so outraged that she's going to make his life somewhat miserable and call the police over a raccoon. Are you kidding me? That's what you want to use our taxpayer dollars for? For a raccoon? Okay, I'm sorry. That's dumb. Really. But the internet doesn't think so. On Facebook, some of the comments are truly a little scary. So they're all over. Most common ones are, oh, that was so mean. That was by somebody named Kelly. Then the person who was filming says, I called the police. Look at me. I'm just doing the right thing. And then she continues, or Randall says, I hope you recorded his tag number. And then other people, Gwendolyn says, OMG, it's scary that we live around people that mean. What? It's scary that you live around people that mean. I can almost guarantee you that man is a kind human being in the rest of his life. He's not going out of his way to hurt a raccoon because he gets his jollies off of hurting raccoons, okay? No, it's not scary that you live in a community where upstanding middle-aged men are like, hey, this raccoon could be a threat to myself or others. I'm going to do something and take care of the issue so that no one else has to be concerned. He didn't know that apparently tons of people know this raccoon and feed it. Also, side note, this is why you shouldn't feed wild animals. Also, then it goes on, and there are people like Mary who say, well, that pissed me off really good. I wasn't there. Really, Mary? Really? What were you going to do about it? Seriously, it's a raccoon. We're going to hurt this man because he's taking care of a raccoon that has questionable health? Okay? No, that's disgusting. Then people get really into it about the police and asking what will happen with the police or whatever. And this person named Tammy says, the cops won't do bleep because it's not worth enough money. And all the cops are interested in are cases that make money. But the tourist needs his bleep beat. Good thing it was you there and not me. I would have done the same bleep thing to him. See how he likes being hit by a shovel. What the heck, Tammy? Are you serious right now? You're threatening violence against a perfect stranger, not really knowing the whole story because of a raccoon? I'm sorry, but if you're really thinking that you're going to get violent, go get violent for something that matters, like saving unborn babies. I don't know. Or feeding people who don't have food, or digging wells for people who don't have water. I don't know, something that helps people. But you're going to get all this worked up and threaten violence to a perfect stranger on the internet because of a raccoon? Also, what's this whole thing about the cops not doing anything except for money? They get paid for our taxpayer dollars to protect other human beings. And no, it would be a huge, huge waste of money if they pursued every person who hurt an animal, especially a wild animal who could potentially be a threat. Next, are we going to start, persecuting people who killed a rat or a mouse inside their house because that rat wasn't hurting anybody? They were just eating food. They eat food in your pantry all the time. How dare you poison them or kill them or hit them with a shovel? It's called they're being a nuisance. You get them out and away, especially if they almost bite somebody and you're concerned. Anyways, this isn't just indicative of people and their zealousness over freaking animals. I'm sorry, they're animals. Quite frankly, they should all be living outside. I think it's honestly kind of gross to have animals living in the house. Watch me eat my words someday in like 10 years when my kid wants a pet and I have a pet in the house, and I'll just be like, gross. Animals should be outside, but one lives in my house, so we'll see what happens. But all in all, I'm just saying animals should be treated like animals, and they are not humans. End of story on that. All right, let's go ahead and look at our next story. So this one is one that I haven't 100% made up my mind about it. But essentially, the World Health Organization decided to recognize gaming addiction as a real illness. And obviously, as you can guess, not everyone agrees with this. Even I don't know 100% how I feel about this, because yes, the same way alcohol addiction is a real addiction, I don't necessarily know if it should be classified as an illness the same way like chickenpox is an illness. Yes, addiction is real and it should be addressed, but essentially, we know it's a first world problem. In an article by Filter Free Parents, it says, kids being fully addicted to video games has now become a large enough problem that it's being studied by various mental health organizations. While excess addiction to video games was declared to be a potential concern under the newly coined term gaming disorder by the World Health Organization back in June of 2018, the problem isn't going away. In fact, it's quite the opposite. At the 72nd World Health Assembly on May 25th, the World Health Organization officially added gaming disorder to the International Classification of Diseases, which is a list of modern-day diseases. Gaming addiction is now technically deemed an actual illness and will be featured in the updated ICD manual to be released in January 2020. While the characteristics of true gaming addiction versus simply having an intense passion for video games is different, as you can guess, the official definition for gaming disorder is listed under the disorders due to addictive behavior category of the ICD. According to the description, it says, quote, a pattern of persistent or reoccurring gaming behavior which may be online or offline, manifested by impaired control over gaming, increased priority given to gaming at the extent that gaming takes precedence over their life, interest, and daily activities, and continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences, unquote. In order for a gaming addiction of an individual to be like officially diagnosed or whatever, an observation pattern of behavior has to illustrate a significant impairment to an individual's social, educational, family, and personal functioning over at least a period of 12 months. Let's set this aside for a second. Gaming addiction is real. Addiction to a lot of things are real. It's something that is growing to an extent that I almost feel like the same way we're declaring pornography a public health crisis in a lot of states now. I think I don't want to get the number wrong, but a lot of states, at least over a dozen states, have declared pornography a public health crisis. I believe that also gaming addiction could be considered something that we need to make people aware of as a public health crisis as well, simply because gaming isn't like doing a lot of other things we do in our everyday life, and it's a new phenomenon that we're just now learning the side effects of. In the same way, if you go back and look at some of my other podcasts, Pornography Kills Love is one of them that I talk about this in depth. I talk about how the brain is chemically triggered and overstimulated by dopamine and other very, very, very strong addictive chemicals in our brain, and it builds pathways. A similar thing happens when people play games obsessively. Now, is everyone who plays a game addicted to it? No. But do some people seriously struggle with this, and it can destroy a person's life, because any addiction can destroy someone's life and quality of life? Yes. And is it something that parents should be very aware of and have their pulse, their finger very closely on the pulse? Yes. Most definitely. Now, obviously, I don't have children yet, but this has been an ongoing discussion between me and my husband for years, to the point where we have seen, my husband works with children and I work with children, and we have seen enough serious and hardcore issues develop because of children overusing games in their life, whether that be handheld or online or Xbox. We have seen enough seriously critical issues develop from the abuse of gaming that we've really kind of set the, and obviously before you're a parent, you say a lot of things that you don't know and you'll break them later. So, there's always that possibility, but I'm pretty sure we're both very firm on the idea that our children will have very, very limited, if any, access to gaming at home, because it is such a threat. And also on top of that, we both had childhood, especially me, I was even more limited to games. We both had childhoods that really were very full because it was it was before the huge gaming wave, and it was in everyone's house, especially for me. And I do think it's healthier for children if they have an hour, spend it outside or reading a book or with family, but I don't see a whole lot of value to gaming. So, and then there is just a whole lot of threat to it. So with very little value and a lot of threat, I just think this is something we all need to be very aware of. All right, now let's talk about the sweet feminists. Now, this is largely in the news because if you haven't seen it already, you will have seen it very, very soon, because Miley Cyrus in the last week has come out with a partnership with Planned Parenthood, and she decided to make a cake saying, you know, abortion is healthcare. And then she posted some topless photos with her covering her private areas in the front with, you know, peeled grapefruits. And that was real classy of her, of course, but everything she does is classy, don't you know? Anyways, she was very shortly after coming out with those photos, specifically the cake photo, she was slammed really hard by the Instagram account, The Sweet Feminist. Now, this is actually an account that someone, actually a good friend of mine, sent to me a while back and asked my thoughts on it. So I was just like, when this one's in the news with Miley Cyrus, I was like, hey, this is a great time. So The Sweet Feminist, it's an Instagram account, and they post feminist messages and their social justice warrior messages on cakes and call it activism. Well, they came out and basically this is their comment. They just put, Miley Cyrus just announced a collaboration with Marcy Jacobs, Planned Parenthood, and Happy Hippie using this image. It was a direct theft of my own original artwork from May 2018 with no credit. It's literally my exact handwriting, message, and concept. Swipe for comparison. Cake art is for everyone, but this is inexcusable. Well, okay, so apparently it's not enough for feminists to shout their messages and have other people shout the same message. If you say it in the same way, then apparently cake art isn't for everyone. Well, that was a controversy. If you look at the rest of their page, it's really laughable. Just leaving the captions out of it and just looking at their cake art. Some of it is, I'm not overreacting, is a cake. Yeah, sometimes women do overreact. As a woman myself, I know that hormones make me a little unpredictable at certain times of the month, and sometimes I do overreact. And it's not anti-feminist to acknowledge that women operate a little differently from men. So there's that. Then they continue with some of their other ones. Safe housing is a human right. No, it's actually not. Housing in general, food, none of it's a human right. The only thing you have a right to is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not happiness, the pursuit of, meaning you have to pursue it if you want it. But housing isn't on that list. There is no right to housing. You do not have a right to anyone else's money for your housing, safe or otherwise. Here we go. I love this one. You don't have to justify your abortion to anyone. Yeah, because everyone wants to eat a cake that says that on it. Actually, you do. How about God and the father and, the child whose life you're taking? Yeah, nope. Abortion is not justifiable, and putting on a cake doesn't make it justifiable. Of course, there's the abortion is healthcare one that Miley Cyrus ripped off. Then abortion isn't a bad word because, like I said, putting on a cake makes it true. So if you say abortion's not a bad word, well, it isn't a bad word. And you're right, abortion isn't necessarily a bad word in the same sense that, the F word is a bad word. Same way murder isn't a bad word, but it sure as heck is a bad action. Murdering someone is a bad thing to do. The same way having an abortion and purposely killing your child out of convenience is bad. Anyways, it just goes on and on. End money bail. Take me seriously. Happy birthday to me. That's great. Whatever. It's probably the tamest cake here. Tell me what you're good at. I don't exist for your amusement. Just on and on. And it's just toxic masculinity isn't inevitable. That one's on an Easter egg. Okay. So we're mixing it up a little. That must have been around Easter time. But Miley Cyrus and the Sweet Feminists at odds. But then again, we know that the feminist movement is at odds within itself because the feminist movement innately says that women are special and unique and should have the same rights as men. But then we came out with transgenderism, which the feminist movement also accepts, but transgenderism reverses everything that they have initially stood for or contradicts it. So before I continue on with the podcast, if you could take a moment to leave a review, leave some stars if you're on iTunes or YouTube, comment below, and I will give you a shout out on either Instagram or the podcast. And honestly, share it with a friend, because that's how this podcast has grown to where it is even today, is you and me, word of mouth, mostly you actually. But all right, so we're going to go ahead and talk about our book for this week. The book this week is The Sacrament of Happy: What a Smiling God Brings to a Wounded World. This is by Lisa Harper. I actually recently heard her spoke, which led me to be interested in her book. So I read this one and I was really pleasantly surprised. It's just, Elisa is a really entertaining person to begin with, and her book did not fail to provide insight as well as entertainment. A little bit about it is Lisa shares heart-wrenching, difficult stories from her past, as well as some side-spitting hilarity along the way. Throughout the book, we see that happiness and sadness can coexist and ebb and flow like the tides. While I don't agree with necessarily absolutely everything in it theologically, it was a good read and had some really solid points. And if you're someone who is interested in what the Bible has to say about happiness, this is a really great place to start and get some insight from another person. So The Sacrament of Happy: What a Smiling God Brings to a Wounded World by Lisa Harper. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about a song. Now, this song is kind of detestable. It's Nightmare, and it is a nightmare, by Hasley. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and play a couple of beats of that song, and we'll go ahead and deconstruct those lyrics. That's a short recording of Nightmare, and it sounds like a nightmare. I mean, wow, that's the kind of song that I want to wake up to every morning and be like, whew, feeling ready for the day after this song. No, this song is hot garbage, truly hot garbage. Now, it starts out, and I skipped this part, but it starts out, now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and so forth. And then she launches into the song. I keep a record of the wreckage in my life. First of all, don't recommend that. If anything, you should make a positive list in your life of all the blessings in your life, because keeping a wreckage of your life is just going to make you real depressed real fast. I got to recognize the weapon in my mind. Sounds self-destructive. Let's keep reading. They talk bleep, but I love it every time. Yeah, that's really destructive. Why do you love it when people talk bleep? Doesn't sound positive at all. And I realize I've tasted blood and it's sweet. That's gross. I've had the rug pulled beneath my feet. We all have. Welcome to life. I've trusted lies and trusted men. Probably shouldn't trust lies, but it's a mistake we sometimes make in life. Trusted men. That's you're framing this like it's a bad thing, because you're putting it right next to trusting lies. You should never trust lies, but trusting men, that's a good thing sometimes. There are certain men in my life that I do trust because they deserve it. Specifically my husband. You should trust some men, and if you don't, you should probably go to therapy, don't you think? I mean, don't trust bad men. I'm not recommending you trust bad men, but you shouldn't trust bad women either. So there you go. She goes, broke down and put myself back together again. Welcome to life again. Everyone's done it. Stared in the mirror and punched it to shatters. Not everyone's done that. Does not sound healthy either for your like what's going on in your brain upstairs. Also not good probably for the mirror or your hand. Collected the pieces and picked out a dagger. Okay, honey. I pinched my skin in between my two fingers and wished I could cut some parts off with some scissors. Okay, you need some serious psychological help. This is not healthy. You should not be fantasizing about cutting off parts of your skin. You really need help. And it's not okay to glorify this in a song, because I'm imagining teenagers who, let's get real, a lot of teenagers go through a disturbed part of their life when their hormones are so outrageous, they think thoughts, I don't know if you remember teenagehood. It wasn't that long ago for me. As you can tell, I'm very young. Teenagers have issues. I knew a lot of teenagers with issues. They need help, especially if they're thinking about cutting themselves. And it's not something you should glorify and not something you should put in a song where children and teenagers are listening to, or even adults, and think that this is okay to glorify. It's not. Continuing, come on, little lady, give us a smile. No, I ain't got nothing to smile about. That's unfortunate. I got no one to smile for. That's unfortunate. I waited a while for a moment to say I don't owe you a bleep bleep thing. I keep a record of the wreckage of my life. I gotta recognize the weapon in my mind. Basically, she has serious issues. She continues by saying, I'm no sweet dream, but I'm a hell of a night. We can tell. No, I won't smile. I'll show you my teeth. Okay, so we're acting like an animal now, because apparently that's the solution to all of our problems, is not smiling, but growling at people. And I'm going to let you speak if you just let me breathe. I've been polite, but I won't be cut dead. Letting a man tell me what I should do in my bed. Okay, pause. No one should be in an abusive relationship. I am not advocating that anyone be in an abusive sexual relationship, which is what she's insinuating by saying, a man tell me what I should do in my bed. Get help. Call the police if you're being abused, and call the suicide hotline if you're having issues like that, and get help. But glorifying it in a song is not the right way to bring about healing, because I don't think you're going to find it there, and you may negatively affect others who listen to your music. She continues, keep my exes in check in my basement. Okay, that's disturbing. Now you're talking about abusing and hurting other people, because kindness is weakness, or worse, you're complacent. Kindness is not weakness. You can be kind and also be tough as nails, but kindness is not weakness, and that's bad messaging. That is a lie. That is believing in lies, as she would say, or trusting lies, as she would say. I could play nice, or I could be a bully. I'm tired and I'm angry, but somebody should be. No, tired and angry is not something you should glorify and aim for. Also, you could be nice or be a bully. Are you now advocating that it's better to be a bully than to be a kind and nice person? That's not what societies are built on. Plus, why are we going around in campaigns in our government and schools saying anti-bullying, get help if you need help, and she's saying she'd rather be a bully? What is she saying to all the people listening to her? It's better to be a bully and trample other people than to ever get trampled. That's what I'm hearing. And now, if you're a Christian and you believe in following Christ's teachings, this is very contrary to that. She continues, I got no one to smile for. I waited for a while for a moment to say I don't owe you a bleep bleep thing. Someone like me can be a real nightmare, completely aware, but I'd rather be a real nightmare than die unaware. Yeah, I'm glad to be a real nightmare to save me. So save me in your prayers. So she puts it there, basically just what I said. She'd rather be a nightmare than die unaware. She'd rather be the bully. She'd rather be the abuser. She would rather be the person inflicting pain than to ever receive another drop of pain. This is someone crying out and screaming for help. But this is not something that's okay to teach to people, young or old or in between. It is not okay messaging to say it is better to be the hurting or to be the abuser than to ever get abused. Now, I'm not advocating anyone get abused. If you're being abused, you need to get help, get out, and run, and get the help that you need. But it is also, I would never, same way I'd never advocate for someone to continue being abused, I would never advocate that someone should become an abuser. That's just evil. So again, there's our modern music. That's when the top 100 charts, or within the top 100 songs for charting music right now. And that just is scary to me, because that's a really disturbing, quite frankly, evil song. So I'm going to go ahead and answer a quick question, because I said I would. All right. Danny says, hey, I want to ask you for some advice because you seem really well put together and extremely brilliant. I was in abortion debate talking to a pro-life, or taking the pro-life side, and the person stumped me with, no one can use someone else's body without their permission. I was curious what your response to this would be. You're right. No one can use someone else's body without the permission, but also no one can kill another person without the permission. So the same way that child is growing in the mother, she won't be there forever. That he or she, that child will not be there forever just because that child is growing within you because of a choice that that adult made. In most cases, taking rape and incest off the table, in most cases, the adult made the decision to have sex. And these are the consequences. And it does the same way this person said, no one can use someone else's body without permission. Well, no one can kill someone else without their permission either. And even then, that's actually not okay. So that's actually another subject we'll talk about next week, maybe. This person also said to me, because I said that, this pro-life person said, just because the baby is dependent doesn't make it any less human or make its life any less. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, she said, sorry, the pro-life girl. Sorry, this is poorly written. Sorry, Danny. I know it's an Instagram message. It's hard for you to say. But Danny says, in her reply was, just because the baby's dependent doesn't make it any less human or make its life any less valuable. And they told me, your argument is based off emotions because you mentioned value of life. I was curious, what would your response to this be? The response is, it's not about emotions. It's about science and logic and fact. The science, logic, and fact says that a human being starts at conception. That is when new DNA is formed, and it has very little to do with emotions. While it is an emotional topic to take another human being's life, it's the equivalent of you saying, well, you can't murder my husband because you're being emotional towards my husband. You just don't like them. So you can't murder my husband. It's like, no, you can't murder my husband because you're taking another human being's life, and morals and law tell you that it's not okay to take another person's life. All right, now to end with good in the world, this one is a little bit of a different story than I've ever done before. Usually for a good in the world story, I take a news story that gives you the warm and fuzzies and shows us the good side of humanity. This one is a little closer to home. This is actually a personal story. I don't want to get too specific or get into the details too much because it is another human being's life and this person is close to me, or I don't want to give away their privacy. Let's just put it that way. But recently, a good friend of mine, whom I've been friends with for years and years and years, they came out as homosexual. And I had no idea that they were struggling with this. They posted this on social media and essentially, said, I've been struggling with this for years, like 5 or 6 years. And I was surprised, but it doesn't matter to me because to me, I love this person and I love them regardless of whatever it is they're struggling with. So I immediately within, I think the post had been out for 30 minutes. I texted this friend of mine and said, hey, I love you so much, no matter what. And they replied, thank you. Oh my goodness. I was worried about your response, whatever. But then this is the good in the world. This is the part of the story that warms my heart is I went on Facebook where a copy of this post was posted and there were hundreds of comments, good comments, people being supportive. And this is coming from a community that is very, very homeschooler, very conservative, very active in conservative politics, and very Christian. And this is a group of people that are supposed to be the hateful bigots, according to the left, the homophobic, hateful bigots. And there are some of the most loving and kind and supportive comments that I have seen. And this is the community that Christians largely are made up of loving, kind people who support you. And it doesn't matter what kind of mistakes you've made in your life or what kind of struggles you are dealing with. We love you because that's what our religion calls us to. And we're trying to live up to that. We're trying to live up to being a loving people. And quite frankly, I think we're pretty darn loving. And we are the tolerant ones. We are the loving ones. When our friends come out as homosexual, when our family members come out as homosexual, we love you. And I'm speaking to all homosexual people. Maybe you're homosexual and you're listening to this. Your friends and family still can love you. And I'm sorry if there have been unkind people in your life, but as a whole, it's the Christian community that builds up the community, builds up the love and tolerance in this world. And we are the ones who are going to be there for you and love you regardless of what you're going through. So the good in the world is truly seeing firsthand how loving our communities can be, regardless of whether we disagree or not. And it's something that I was talking about recently is public life is always going to be separate from private life. Publicly, I'm always going to say homosexuality should not be the law of the land. It should not be something that we publicly embrace. It should not be something that we are promoting in our schools and libraries and to children. But privately, I'm going to always be loving to my homosexual friends and family, because I know it's cliche, but you don't hate the person because they've sinned. You hate the sin and love the person. And with that, I want to wish you a marvelous rest of your week. God bless you. God bless America.